Artist Enough is an interview series in which we talk about journey of becoming an artist and successes and struggles of being one. In the third episode, Cecilia Fox interviews Dinnis van Dijken, who's a Dutch artist and writer. His work explores the function of art through the medium of painting. Through writing about art and being active in various roles in Groningen art scene, he facilitates conversations to enable art to function. Thank you for coming to the interview. So as a first question, I would like to ask, what is your association with the word artist, and how easy is it for you to feel artist enough, or can you ever feel artist enough?
A really complicated question.
Yeah, it's okay.
I mean, especially when I graduated, I work in painting, so like easy to feel like an artist when you have a palette and paint and everything, and because it conforms to the stereotype of what an artist should be. However, throughout my whole study, I always felt that it was an outdated form of being an artist, as something that is just easily grasped onto, understood, and that there wasn't a lot to explore anymore. Wasn't innovative, it wasn't contemporary. So like simultaneously I felt like an artist, but also not a contemporary one.
But also for you, does it need to come some kind of I finished study, now I'm like artist, or do you feel like being artist is something like inside of the human that was there even before they studied art?
Well, I don't come from an artistic background in the sense that like my parents have nothing to do with art necessarily, or had never had a particular keen interest in art. So I had to learn quite a lot. I come from mostly a workers background, so it's been a bit of an uphill struggle when it comes to that, because you have to find out everything. And art school is sort of very nice in the way that it facilitates in that, especially Academy Minerva is one that is kind of based on doing that. It's sort of like they get a lot of students that don't have a background in art and stuff, which I think defines their role within the Netherlands very much.
So for you, but how did you realize that you wanna study art then, if it was not so logical choice?
The reason for that was that I did want to be an artist to some degree. I have been model drawing since I was 16, together with a group of artists that were in their 50s already and stuff, that were very classically trained. They invited me once because they knew my parents and they knew that I wanted to draw and stuff, and I had asked one person, like, I have a portfolio, can you look and see if I'm good enough to go to the art academy? So like for a couple of years I was doing model drawing, but actually like I had other ideas as well. I wanted to become a doctor, but then I decided to study Scandinavian language and culture, and also did journalism at the same time for 1 year, because I thought I could always be an artist as a hobby or something. But during that 1 year of college at the Rijksuniversiteit, I quickly realized that I wouldn't have any time to do any sort of art, so I decided to quit my studies at the Rijksuniversiteit and then go to art academy, also because I figured I was young enough that if I made a mistake, I could always study something else later and make up for lost time. And that's kind of where I realized that I didn't want to live without art, sort of, or not compromise on it.
Yeah, and also now you kind of mentioned like the different roles that you have, that as a writer you have also you're a writer and artist and maybe more journalistic writer and art criticism writer, but is it for you everything is like art, or is there also some kind of division in it?
Like, to be honest, I don't question a lot if it's really art or not. Like for myself as an artist, like my artworks, I have a criteria for them for when I know that I'm happy with it as an art piece, but I don't really question if they're art. The same goes for all of my other roles. Like I do what I think is necessary and what I think is valuable, and whether or not that meets the criteria of art or not art or something, or art critic or anything, is not really worthwhile for me. Like for me, it's more important that those things are valuable and that they do a good job in what they should be doing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But when was like a moment for you that you kind of felt that you found your like inner logic of a, or some kind of like a key work, or like that all these like different threads like came together? Like, do you have like specific moment that you or a specific work it could be also?
I think it kind of started during my master's. I made an art piece where I had a painting and an analog pinhole camera, and there I felt like I was going into a sort of territory that wasn't explored before, but also that I thought that it didn't matter to me that's what anyone else thought of it, but that I thought it was interesting and worthwhile, and that I got a lot of satisfaction out of it. I think that was the sort of the key point for me, that I started feeling confident in what I was doing, and like mm, that still after all these years I stand for that art piece.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I also recognize the same emotion in some of my work, so I really get what you say. And but do you also feel that you have made some works like that were failure, or like what you would consider your like biggest artistic failure? And it could be like more like internal one, but it could be also more like external one, so it's also more about like what the failure even means or so.
I mean, a lot of my work during Minerva was pure shit. So, but I never see them as a failure. Like for me, like those were all necessary for me to come to the point where I'm now, sort of, because I had to really work from scratch when it comes to my understanding of art. So, like making a lot of works that don't necessarily meet the criteria of other people nor myself. It's sort of, you have to do that sort of stuff. So I don't see it as a failure. Like personally, I can look back at it and laugh about it and stuff. But like there were some that failed technically miserably. Like during my graduation of the masters, I tried to upscale those pinhole photographs to the same size of the paintings that were like 2 meters 20. I was really broke, so I could only afford 2 tries. Both failed.
Oh.
Both didn't work. So I had miscalculated something. So like the photograph turned out to be this big on a painting that was 2 meters wide and not really very good quality. So that was a big fail and a lot of money wasted. But for the rest, mm,
Mm.
like the thing is, I can also live. I can live with the fact that something doesn't work out or something has like failed or something. And like for me, I'm really a process driven person. Like for me, it's all about the process. When I've done an artwork, when it's done, I don't particularly care so much anymore what happens to the art piece or something. Like for me, I'm not really sentimental about those sort of things. So I have like there are maybe a handful of paintings that I'm like, oh yeah, I like them. And for the rest, it's more like if I would sell them for a bit of money and they disappear or whatever, or they just disappear anyway, it's like I wouldn't care. I like the idea of failure. I find interesting because I feel sometimes there's an unwritten thing that everything should be a success within art. Like it's sort of like everyone should have a very glossy career that's really should accelerate really fast, and every step should be genius, or every step should be good. And I don't think the creative process is naturally in that sort of way. If you look at like any artist in art history, there's a lot of things that you could dub failures or something, but like that, it's more like, yeah, then what is a failure or something? It's not. It's a. I find it very nice when things become very real. Like when not everything is a success, and I like that reality of like having to really work for something and struggle, or like to make something out, and like even because it's the same problem within the academic world where every research should be almost a breakthrough, and when people do PhD, sometimes they're very disappointed that the hypothesis they put out is disproven. So they say like, oh yeah, I think that A leads to B, and the only conclusion I can draw at the end of it, A does not lead to B, and that's, people see it as a failure or a disappointment. Whereas that is scientifically as valuable as proving that A leads to B. And I think sometimes people forget that as a valuable thing, and it applies to art as well. And I find that really frustrating.
Like for me, like one topic that is personally interesting is also like the suffering in art, and like, do you need to suffer to make art, or can you like also make art as a happy person?
Yeah, I think it is.
Because also for me, like suffering doesn't has to be like really in a dramatic sense, but I feel like art oftentimes is some kind of like a it starts as a problem or as a statement or as a disagreement of something. So the suffering in art can also be like very subtle in a way.
Yeah, because I was about to say that, like, yeah, the notion of suffering I find really annoying within art. Like the idea that we should suffer for that is mostly something you hear outside of the art world, as well as sometimes within the art world when they're really romantic. Like a lot of painters like to think of that way, that they're suffering and struggling in their studio, that sort of stuff. I like to see it more that, like, just like within skateboarding, like I never got why anyone would do that, because out of 1,000, maybe 10,000 tries, they might make the trick once.
Mm-hmm.
And all that time they're videotaping it, and like there's so much failure in trying in that until that one moment that it succeeds, and that's like this god moment where like it's pure joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of see art in that same sort of way, in the sense that, like, yeah, it's not comfortable, but you're doing it for that one bit. So like, and it's just also like suffering is, it could be from like, it could be a motivation, like a discontent about something that triggers you to make art, and suffering is that sort of like trigger. But I find that really hard within art or something to do that within, like right now within my artwork. I'm trying to really go against that, where I'm trying to figure out if I can use my art to make myself comfortable as I can, and like in all sorts of ways that I can imagine. Because there still is this idea that we should sacrifice things, that we are, that is a poor economic choice, that it's like, so that is, this suffering is like a natural thing to be in the art world, where I don't think it's necessary. Like within the given economic systems that we're in, and like the subsidies and everything, I feel that there should be a way that we can figure out to live comfortably and not continuously have to sacrifice the quality of life.
Yeah, I agree with that. But could you maybe have some example of like a artwork or like a moment that felt really like this magical like success moment, or like it could also again be like more like internal feeling, but it could also be like something that came like that you had some recognition or something, but like something that really like felt this magical moment of artistic success for you.
Yeah, I find that really hard. I mean,
But it
I
could.
get the most fun out of very dumb, straightforward, like model painting, or like,
Mm,
um, especially like in groups and something where you have one model and like 20 people or something, and they're painting, and to be really, really quick and really, really good within like a limited time frame, that gives me a lot of satisfaction,
mm,
which is not necessarily about the artwork, because usually I throw them away after I'm done.
mhm,
But that can be euphoric. But in general, like just getting the validation, like I've won some prizes and stuff, and those, even though I didn't want to admit to it, it felt like it was a validation that made me feel more secure about my artwork, and the fact that like some galleries and stuff wanted my work. Like the acknowledgement from the validation from like the outside world, sort of, yeah, that it helps, or something that made me feel really good. But I don't know, I can't pinpoint it to precise moments. It's been like tiny things that sort of accumulated. Like I'm always afraid to sort of put it to one thing, because that becomes a very fragile thing in a way, because um, if it turns out to be not true or like different later or something, then your confidence can crack really easily, rather than like building a solid base of where you get your satisfaction and validation from. If it's like a broader thing, then you have more foothold and you'll feel, at least personally, that's for me how it works. I feel more secure through that and accomplished.
So we talked about some like artistic successes, and I was also wondering, how did you experience your like art studies, and what was the like um, valuable experience that you gained from it? Or do you also have some like, because also now you're like graduated like years ago, so how do you like look back to this period in a way, also from like in retrospect?
Well, actually, like my uh, the my bachelor's I found really hard, because I struggled a lot with whether I was an artist enough or not. And I had to learn so much, read so much, and like also gather so much skills, because like my goals were not aligned with the education program, in the sense that I wanted to be sort of like uh, I wanted to be a contemporary artist, but I still wanted to learn all the traditional skills of painting, and that was not taught anymore at the art academy. So I had to find ways to teach myself that outside of the art academy, which meant that I had to go to a lot of model drawing groups, which meant that like 3 days a week outside of my art education, I was still making a lot of hours with other groups trying to learn all these tiny things, while it was actively being discouraged within the art education system, because it doesn't align very much with what they wanted to teach, because that was something they were actively trying to rid themselves of, since Academy Minerva was historically known as a painter's program.
Mhm.
So that was kind of frictional, but in the end, I kind of figured it out. I did get a lot of support, from example, from David Strobrand and Raniele Terpstra, who believed in me more than others, and I think that really, really helped me. Uh, and I think personally for me, it was very good to go to art school, because I think you like not only learn a lot of different skills, and I think art is necessarily in life anyway. It's also uh, like you learn a lot about yourself, mostly. Like, so like you really learn your position within society, within, as a person politically, within art, because that's a whole spectrum as well. And that was really, really hard. And I didn't feel comfortable after leaving Academy Minerva. I think I left very confused about what I wanted and what I wanted to do. Even though a gallery wanted my work instantly,
Mhm.
I didn't feel confident enough to continue with that gallery, because I
Mhm.
didn't believe in myself. So then I did a master's, and it was there that I became sort of more confident. And I had two very good tutors, Thomas Elefson and Martin Gustafsson, uh, that also really supported me and treated me as an equal, and taught me a lot of valuable things. And the art students there, because like, and during the masters, it's a very different group. It's the average age I think was 35. I was one of the youngest there. I think I was 25. So it's like everyone had a lot more experience, and they usually studied abroad. You know, they came from Australia, New Zealand, and they came with a lot of experience and a lot of conviction that what they were doing was the only thing that they could possibly do, because it was. And I think for me that was like really helpful to be in that environment. So like, but it was like education-wise, it was not in the traditional sense that you have professors and stuff telling you things. It was more that you learned a lot from being among your peers and colleagues and like really working on a project for like a long term of 2 years that fully committed, no other obligations. You do that. And I think that was really, really good for me in the right timing, as well as being outside of my context, so not in Groningen, but abroad. And I think I really needed that personally to also become aware of the preconceptions I had as a Dutch person, and especially as a Groninger as well, which I think has its own little cultural connotations.
But also like what for you personally is the main function of art education? Is it like the place for reflection or community or like
Yeah, it depends. It's the place where you just solely focus on, like, it depends. Like the bachelor's and the master's, I feel like they're two different things, and also depending on the context within that art education, like is it in Groningen or is it in Amsterdam or something? Because like here, uh, there might just be more work to do. Like as a lot of students don't come from an art background, so it might be they might not even know where to find resources on art history or that's by themselves. Like within the art education here, I feel like that should be like handed on a bit more, and a lot more criticality should be taught. Um, I think that should be the main focus there. That could be enhanced a bit, like criticality combined with a lot of art theory and art history. Like for me personally, that would have helped me a lot because like still I'm figuring out those things every day.
Mhm. And yeah, now we talked a little bit about like art education, and I think like art education is also kind of like this safe playground, like that you can experiment, and it's still kind of like a safe bubble, and you have all the like stimulation and expectations from other people that can also feel very comforting. But then when you graduate, then you like have to figure everything out on yourself, and like oftentimes people explain how they experience this like black hole like
Mm.
after the graduation. So how was it for you, or like how do you feel about it? Like did you felt ready like after graduating?
After I graduated from my bachelor's, I absolutely did not feel ready. I felt I was inexperienced, insecure, that I still didn't have a particular clue how the art world worked or what they expected from me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I defined a lot of my artwork that I had to fit their expectations. Well, of course, as well as mine, but I felt like the pressure to answer their expectations suddenly became really high or something. Or that I also, at the time, I wasn't really sure about what I wanted my art to do for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that really, really hard because there's no one that can tell that except for yourself, which is also why I decided to do a master's, because I didn't feel like I had developed enough or like was had enough footing to continue on my own. And I actually think my master's really helped me with that, like to find my footing very strongly. Because there you were really also, it's kind of weird. They also left you in a black hole actually within that study themselves, because
Mm-hmm.
during the master's they had no uh, you were just supposed to do your project and they had criteria and they gave you feedback, but there was nothing you really had to fulfill apart from your work.
Mm-hmm.
And especially being in Sweden and stuff, it was like socially very isolating, very hard to connect with people sometimes, and trying to figure out the subtleties of how Swedish society works is also a thing. Um, so there I felt like I was really in a black hole where I could do nothing but art, and there you sort of started just building from scratch, in the sense that I started just doing completely what was in line with my own interest and what was in my own curiosity, as well as looking at the world around me and thinking like, I can take that, that, and that, and I can combine it to my own liking and see what the interest is in that. And that I think was very valuable for me. So it was like, kind of felt like I had taken the black hole and amplified it a bit, and that was helpful for me again.
Yeah, I feel also like sometimes in like art academy, like you get like a grades, and then you feel like almost that you like working on somebody's like approval, or you like measure your success or how good you do just based on a grades or the feedback. But I think as an artist, you really have to like kind of find out your like inner motivation or inner logic, and why you do it. And I think that is really difficult thing to like develop sometimes, that you have this inner like roadmap in like where do you go, and that you can build like a career out of it.
Yeah. I also found it really hard to come back to Groningen in that sense because I felt like I came back into a black hole because the the art scenes differ radically. I mean, even within the Netherlands, the art scene within the north is completely different than the Randstad, and the art scene from Stockholm and Scandinavia is radically different too. Here in Groningen, like here in Groningen, it's really like a experimental cultures and maker culture. It's like very rooted within anti-establishment feelings, with the idea that we're doing things for ourselves and stuff. And I think that I really had to work hard to find my footing again here in Groningen. So like that's why I kind of started writing. Like I've always done writing alongside of my artwork to make sense of what I was doing, like
Yeah.
to get a clear picture of like, okay, I'm doing this. Does it make sense within whatever context? Like trying to find my own parameters and also trying to figure out how I work myself, because that's really helpful for the future, like for your process. But then I started writing here to sort of give a platform to artists, young artists, because there wasn't anyone doing that. So I figured I should just do it myself and like get started and just contribute to building something collectively, like a, yeah, and to do something good in that. And there, from there on, sort of things escalated to having a lot of side projects and side things, which fuel my artistic practice, and they sort of overlap. But I think within the Groningen art world, you have to. It's good to be able to do a lot of things since there's so many roles to fulfill.
Yeah, and the way you describe it, it also like in a way feels that you really need to have like kind of like connections to like be artists, or like you really need to build up your like network, and or do you like in a way like artists can't like exist like alone or something, like it's like sometimes it feels like yeah, it's not good enough to have like a good work, you really have to kind of like move through like all this art scene and like know the spaces. And I think that is also really like big part of being artist that is maybe not touched upon like during like art study, that like we focus so like on our like individual work, but actually it's so much about um, understanding the bigger structure behind it and how everything works, and how like organizations works. Or was it also something that you missed during your study?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I mean, I graduated from Minerva in 2014, which was the time that all the social securities for artists were scrapped from the governmental policies after the financial collapse. Uh, and everyone was kind of still struggling to know what they should be doing to be a successful artist. And that's when you got that whole entrepreneurship thing where everyone started to think about branding and stuff. And I think it's true that that is helpful, and still it should be like art. It would be good if art academies spend time teaching that, but I think it's also a bit problematic because like every artist has a very like unique role of their own, like, and if you look on the broader whole, it's good to know how to do applications for the Mondrian fonts, on how to network, on how to do all of those things. Um, but at the same time, I feel that puts a lot of pressure on the artist alone. Sometimes I'm not convinced whether or not that should be really taught at art school, or whether we should change the system around art to sort of take that pressure off of artists. Because I think it's true, like you need connections, you need to build up connections, you need to always be present to a degree, and like people need to know that you're alive and that you're doing things and that
Mm-hmm.
you're out there. And the only way to do that is to, yeah, build up a network and just start doing things. And yeah, but there's no one really that can teach you that thing. And some people have it even better, and they just come from a good, well connected background already and don't particularly need that either.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, also now I started thinking about that also, like um, yeah, like when are you like ready as an artist? Or like I feel also like as an artist you also have to like kind of develop as a human or something, or like it takes like so much more work to become like an artist, because it's not about just having like a skills, or like there is no like a logical thing like when do you like arrive as artist. There is so much like subtle things it includes in a way.
Yeah, to be honest, I think indeed like personal development is the biggest thing in that. Because also, like for me, the most interesting art is made when it's really close to being personal as well as sort of to addressing universal topics, but like has to resonate with one another really. Like it has to come from a sincere personal place, and I like it when it's all intermixed and nuanced and not simple, that it's not like just political art or just something, but that it's rooted in a personal level very strongly, and that is reflective of that. And I think that uh, that takes a lot of work and time and stuff.
Yeah, because like most people go to like art academies, they're like 19 years old and then they graduate, and then like but maybe they like it's sometimes hard to like find like that these topics would be relatable in like a larger scale. And I think maybe for some people it takes like until they are 40 that they really feel like that they have like a strong artistic position, and that it's kind of resonates with people in a way.
Like for me, I like it when stuff reflects upon life as well in all its nuance and complicatedness. And at least from what I've seen, that usually doesn't really occur until a person has like really developed as a person, that has like really gone through a lot of life, that has experienced a lot of things, and that has really developed personally until like true maturity and stuff. And that's where I think usually where art and personal life and personal development align very much, and where I think it's most beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
where you can read so much more from their art than just like sort of like a very simplistic concept or story that someone thinks of within the art academy or something, that it always feels a bit more shallow, a bit more insecure, no matter or not if it's like actually politically relevant or socially relevant, because that might as well be. For me personally, I think I like it better when it's like when that person has had a lot more time outside of the art academy to go through a lot and like integrate all of that richness into that
Mm-hmm.
one concept as well. So like also that within the roots of the concept, you really have the hair roots and things spread out more.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah. Yeah, and if you now started talking about roots, then also like I have one question, like when you look in your own like art practice, like if you would have to describe it like with that one word, like what is it like rooted in? It could be like whatever. It could be like a action, it could be emotion, it could be like most like absurd thing, like that is like a essence of your art word art practice
me,
in yourself.
myself, yeah. I think it's I think this speaks mostly of the moment that I'm in right now and the work that I'm working on right now. It's very self-reflective in the sort of sense that I'm trying to figure out how can I improve my quality of life through my art, as well as criticizing a lot of preconceptions that there are about art and how systems such as subsidies and stuff should function. And I'm trying to align all of those together, but it's mostly just me. Because like currently I'm very tired of like the ideas of suffering, that sort of stuff. So I'm trying to act. That is my trigger to like build something that would prove the precise opposite of that. Mostly a debate I have with myself, I think. Like I hear a lot of these sort of things and then I try and put it into that and kind of debating with myself whether, or like it's kind of like building an antithesis or like a thesis of like concepts of thinking.
Yeah, you describe it as like it's rooted in yourself, but I almost hear that it's like rooted like in art itself, and I feel like you also was like reflecting that you're really um, interested of redefining the function of art, and I feel like sometimes you work also a lot as a like a moderator or like being part of like a arcade collective and reflecting on what art is. So um, how do you like combine it in your like artistic practice, or how it enhances it?
I think you're quite right in describing it as you did, that it's like within all of these different roles as writing about art and stuff, I try to enable art or like make art work in a sort of sense that like through conversations or through or amplifying certain things and concepts. And I think you can do that through various roles, such as moderating for someone else, art critique, or like being part of a collective that mixes art critique and performance and all these sort of things. Like I like to look at the functions of art and like I like to facilitate conversations for that reason, because I think that is how you change things actually, and where the magic kind of happens of art, which is usually not in the art piece but more within the people. And like to sort of spark that connection and get that sort of fire going, you can not just the art you need but everything else. So like I like to stimulate everything in whatever role that is. Like I don't really define either of those practices as like, oh, this is me as an art critic or this is me as a thing. It's more like I work every time I get a job, I try and assess whether that is interesting or like valuable for like enabling art or the functioning of it. Like I like to support others and their work as well. I don't have a big ego in that sort of sense that I feel like it always needs to be about me or something. I like to facilitate others. And in a collective, especially that collective, there's space for me individually as well as collective works. And I don't care whether or not like my name is like really in bold or something. I like to think that I'm contributing something valuable to that work that I think needs doing, whether or not that's evenly distributed or not. If I do a lot of work, whereas others some less, they might do it some other time where I will drop the ball. And I think within the collective we have enough trust in each other that that will be fine. And so far that's worked out very well.
So yeah, you also do a lot of like invisible work of like kind of like yeah, bit like behind the scenes, and I think uh, yeah, I think it's also really like interesting. How do you like explain your like artistic position, or that it doesn't even matter that you get credit? And also earlier you mentioned like how you like that you throw your works away, and I think it's also really like interesting, like um because yeah, of course there is like people who are like, oh, like I'm like saving all my drawings and then like in 20 years I'm gonna like sell that. But I feel like your artistic position is really like about kind of like a journey and being in a moment.
Yeah, I think so. Like I mostly work based on interest, and it's the interest that is for me the driving
Yeah.
part, which isn't so much connected to individual art pieces or like my own art practice. It's just I
Yeah.
like it all, and I like to be everywhere and do
Mm-hmm.
everything because it keeps my days very varied. If it gets into this, like I tried for 1 year to sit in my studio and paint, and I really was really bored, and I couldn't do it, and I
Mm-hmm.
felt really like I wasn't contributing anything meaningful in that sort of sense. And now, like I really enjoy being part of the Groninger art scene and like helping out wherever I can because I find it very meaningful. It gives me a lot of purpose. You can see the results of it many times and stuff. And like, it's also nice not to be perpetually focused on your own
Mm-hmm.
work. It's nice to just be generous with your time and help out others. Um, like that gives me as much purpose as my own work does. And it's also interesting because otherwise you keep being in your own little world, your little bubble, your little perspective. And I like being in a position where I perpetually have to work on myself and like keep my mindset open and perspective open and keep learning all the time and not necessarily improving, but just, adding to what you know and stuff and have a bit of a richer world than just being a little factory and producing artworks.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's definitely really um, important part of art to also just um, yeah, to create these connections and like conversations. And I think it's really valuable, like uh, what you do, because yeah, I also saw you like few days ago, like when you were like moderating like the talks with different art organizations for the graduation show, and I really felt that you very like powerfully like kind of um, bridge the gap between like two people or something. Or I like, yeah, I almost feel like you're maybe like a marriage counselor or something for the art world. Like,
I like that. I like that idea very much. But like the thing is, I feel that there's always a sort of like implicit. Um, there are a lot of preconceptions about art, and you notice that when you're in a room and some people, you notice that there's a sort of like power imbalances or something, and you notice these subtle things. And I like to play into those things and sort of level it out again and make people
mm-hmm.
connect, because otherwise art doesn't do much. Then it's just a prop for, I don't know, esoteric elite hobbies or something, rather
Mm-hmm.
than what it should actually is. Like it's for everyone. Everyone can understand it and stuff. And I like to play with these levels of preconceptions and whether something is high and low, and like just try and make it meet and level again. Like I think that's really fun.
Yeah, yeah, I think also like when I was like younger, then I also felt that I have to like convince my parents to even like explain them like why I wanna do art or what art even is or something, and like how like, and that's why I also understand like why you like really the levels and how you wanna like break them. But like how was it like what for you rooted this motivation behind it?
Well, one thing was indeed like um, explaining to my parents the weird shit that I was doing. Is
Mm.
like, or explaining if I was part of a group show, why some people would do a performance and be completely naked or throwing around things, like for a lot of people that haven't gone through art school or like or the people that haven't really read into that, it can be hard to explain, even though the motivations for it are sometimes purely logical. And I find that contrast really fun because like art can be really absurd, yet you can explain it historically and very logically, like as
Mm.
okay, this is reactionary to that and this happened and stuff. And And there's always a discrepancy between the sort of understanding, like if you're sort of part of the art world, you won't question that, or like you'll be aware of how it came to be. But a lot of people don't, and I like systems and I like talking to people, like connecting with people. So that just came natural to me. Also, my artworks kind of function in that sort of way of like usually combining high and low to an absurdity level, and then uh, talking to people for whatever background, because it kind of usually like it's weirdly it somehow comes across as weirdly provocative to either group,
Mm-hmm.
and I find that really nice to sort of bring that back together again.
But then, do you believe that you need to have some kind of like preconceived knowledge to like look art, or do you think like, or some like I sometimes feel like that you maybe just need like openness to look art, because I feel like everybody could look art and get something out of it, but I think maybe sometimes there is just like hesitance, or like being scared of it, like being scared of unknown, and maybe like, yeah, yeah, I think maybe it's just about like that ability to just taking time to look it, or what do you think is needed to look art? Is it like a knowledge, or
I mean, it's no different from sports or music. Like you can enjoy sports and music to, even if you don't particularly know much about it, you
mm,
can sort of figure the rules out as you go.
mhm,
I think art functions in the very same way. Like I've had family members of mine who had never ever been to an exhibition and then seeing a very edgy performance, and when I spoke to them, they got like 90% out of the performance what they should get
mhm,
without no knowledge whatsoever, but sort of being sharp, critical, and open minded. They got a lot out of it, and they just needed that 10% of knowledge to validate the reasoning for like
mm,
doing that performance. And that like that's where I saw me coming in and giving them
mhm.
that 10%. Is like, there you go. But I don't think like art is just as much a thing that you need training for as anything else, you know, like religion is also complicated and stuff, and if you don't know the Bible or something, you're also going to have a hard time figuring out what's going on among Christians and stuff.
Mhm.
So like it all needs explaining, it all needs some kind of training. And within the Netherlands at least, art education and culture in general has been really pushed to the background as something of a leftist hobby, or a something that isn't necessary, uh, which I think is a great loss as a nation. As a society, you shouldn't downgrade culture to the sort of those uber pragmatic levels. That's like of essentialness. It is essential, and
But in an ideal world, do you like wish that like art would be somehow like more popular? Because also like it is really tricky question, because also like it's like, yeah, you can make like a lot of likable art and put in a museum and do a lot of tours there, but how do you, that is always not like this pure art, so how?
yeah. But then you're sort of working with a notion that there's only one art, the preconceived notion of what is the art and stuff. And I don't believe in that
Yeah,
thing at all. Like
me neither.
I think that art is like sports. You have all sorts of different ones with different rules and different games,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, I think people should be made aware of that. That isn't just one appreciative art that everyone should like. Arts that are like the Mona Lisa or something should be a nice painting. I think it's really shit. Uh, and that's a weird opinion because like it's just popularly accepted that that's a nice painting, even though there's so many more nicer ones out there. I think everyone should have access to culture, and that it should be taught. It's more, it enriches life, and also like it's more about. I think what mostly should be taught is just criticality and stuff, and because that is also what art is usually about. It's like filled with curiosity and criticality and a way of analyzing the world around you. That's what art does. You put something weird in a room, and if you have been trained in a particular way within the art education, you'll read it instantly because you have a lot of tools for it and stuff. And why not give those tools to everyone else?
Yeah, I think it was really like beautiful thought how you like explained the function of art, and I think we can like now slowly start going end of the interview. And I was wondering like what are like the projects that you're currently involved, or do you want to like share maybe some upcoming projects or
Well, I have a solo show in Afslag BLV, which is dependance of Museum Belvedere, probably in October. Very excited about that because I'm going to make a lot of new works, and I haven't previously had the time to focus solely on just producing artworks. I'm actually looking forward to that as a change from my mixed practice. I'm part of Arcade. They'll probably put something up. I'll be moderating things. I'll be writing things. I don't know. Just keep everything in check.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see your solo show, and yeah, I'm really happy to talk with you today. And thank you so much for the interview. Thank you for watching Cecilia Fox Art TV. Please subscribe to the channel to not miss out the upcoming episodes, and to learn more about the work of Dinnis van Dijken, check out the description box down below.